Welcome back. Namibian President Shelleygan is feeling the heat of the Palapala farm robbery. He's come under fire for allegedly helping cover up that crime.
Well, it's alleged suspects from Namibia stole the money and fled back to that country where they were caught. So let's get the latest now from the Namibian journalist Shelleygan Peterse, who joins us now from Windhoek. Shelleygan, thank you so much for your time this morning. Can we understand from the Namibians' side or perspective exactly what transpired? Were these robbers actually from Namibia? Was there indeed a cover-up on behalf of the South African president as well as the Namibian president? What do you understand about the events of that day?
So according to our investigations, what has become transparent is, or what has transpired is that the maid of Cyril Ramaphosa is a Namibian woman, allegedly Floriana. And essentially this young lady, when she discovered the money, she then called up her brother, who is allegedly also a gang member in Cape Town. And he then set up a crew, and then they allegedly broke into the house, stole the money. And when this was discovered by Cyril Ramaphosa, what our investigations lead to is that he then called, as Fraser stated in his affidavit, he then called our president Shelleygan to assist him in trying to trace back his money. During 2020, when everything transpired, there was such an odd case where a man allegedly came into the country over the borders and he tested positive. At some point, the police had apprehended him in, I think, down south in Namibia, and he was brought to Windhoek and he was quarantined at the time, or so we thought, because he tested positive, and those were our rules at the time, was that you need to quarantine if you test positive at the, wherever you test positive. And essentially this man was just called a fugitive. It has now come out that in fact this guy was allegedly part of the gang who robbed Cyril Ramaphosa, who allegedly robbed Cyril's farm. His name is Emmanuel David. Now, Emmanuel David's story for us at that time was so particular, but as information came to light this time, that he is part of this sort of farm gate saga. And so that's what we know, that Emmanuel David came into the country. When he came here, and the Presidential Protection Unit's head, I think it's Walter Rode, allegedly came into the country undetected through no borders, security whatsoever, because we have no record of him ever being in Namibia. Our sources say that he was here and they essentially detained Emmanuel David to get out of him where the money is, what they've used it for. And by our side, what we know is our prosecutor general also told us that they had detected in 2020 that a certain money came into the country. Now, when the certain money came into the country and they were trying to investigate, there was no assistance from the South African authorities at all, be it your police services, be it your investigators, be it some of your legal statutory bodies also did not assist our prosecutor general. So that led to a dead end. As we've seen over the recent days, we've seen how some of these suspects have allegedly also spent the money. So as far as we have, that's all we have. We don't really have any leads so far as to exactly what was President Gankop's role, how exactly did Rode come into the country undetected. But as far as we know, our sources have confirmed that. But in terms of concrete evidence, we're still investigating that.
Shelleygan, this guy was caught, was fined, and was now said to be back in South Africa. I mean, just help us understand that part as well, because that's why we call it the great cover-up. You know, we call it Farmgate, because it's now seeming a little more convoluted than, you know, what we're getting at the moment.
Yeah. So with Emmanuel David, when he was quarantine at the time, and Rhoda was speaking to him. What our president said in his statement and reiterated on Monday was that Emmanuel David came in. He was charged for entering the country illegally, and he was just quarantined, and he was on his free will went back. But those close to Emmanuel David said he never tested positive for COVID-19 at the time. Essentially what happened was he detained him. The issue here is that Emmanuel David allegedly by himself went back, but our information from our security sources say that he was taken back by Rhoda. Rhoda took him back.
You know, as you're speaking about this, yeah, Shelleygan, you know, it's 62 million rand that has been in question here that was allegedly kept at Farmgate. As you're speaking about the events that happened in 2020, we also have to remember the state of the different countries in 2020. We were under lockdown, right? And a normal lockdown, there are certain lockdown restrictions that both countries have had to adhere to. So one wonders exactly how much of those lockdown restrictions that were imposed on South Africans were actually not, not followed, whether it's on behalf of state security or behalf of the gangway stuff that ran away. As matters currently stand, the president or the Namibian president has completely denied helping the South African president Ramaphosa in any way or form. Is there any form of new information or evidence that would suggest that that is indeed not true?
Not really. In terms of the concrete information, other than Fraser's statement and some of our sources giving us the information, it's very difficult to pinpoint exactly some of the dates. I don't know if you've seen the summary that's been going around as to how everything transpired. It's our evidence right now is just Fraser's word, of course, and our security source, and now most of our sources sort of confirming what actually transpired. If you look at the papers in terms of border control for Emmanuel, it suggests that he went freely. It suggests that he was here. He was called a fugitive at that time, a South African fugitive. So when he went back, he went through border control by himself. But those who were around can say that when he left, it wasn't because he left out of his own will. So that's all we have. We are really still trying to investigate and get some of the key dates that pinpoints exactly, okay, when Emmanuel went back, what exactly transpired during that time? Because it said that some of the other suspects allegedly came back to Namibia in the last 2 years and spent millions on a little town in Namibia called Otapin in the northern part of the country, where you could, if you were around or knew the suspects and their families, you could see that money was actively being spent. Millions were spent on cars. Improvements were done on a guest house in it was a very small scale guest house, and later on became very fancy at the time. And there were questions over the last 2 years, and I think this just ties it all together. So it seems like a puzzle that there's still some of the key pieces missing. But I'm sure, because our authorities at the moment is not investigating anything. Our authorities is not investigating anything. Or the only authority that might be investigating is the Office of the Ombudsman, because one of our political parties took the matter to the Ombudsman for him to investigate the matter.
Now, actually, that's a great point that you raised, because it leads us to our next question, Shelleygan. Our president is feeling the heat, where even parliament sittings are being disrupted because the, opposition parties are asking for accountability. Answers are being asked of our president. Is the same heat being felt by President Hage Geingob, besides, of course, one of the political parties, putting it forward to the Ombudsman to, do a little search? Is he actually feeling any real heat like our head of state?
Unfortunately not. President Geingob has not been pressured from any of our groups. In fact, let me just give you a picture of what transpired in our parliament when it resumed sitting after a month on Tuesday. So one of the first questions asked on the floor was from the Namibian Economic Freedom Fighters, NEFF. Now, the parliamentarian Longinus Ipumbu told the speaker that he wants President Gangop to come to Parliament or via his Prime Minister answer and account for the allegations brought forth by Arthur Fraser. And essentially, our speaker said, I rule your question out of order because the person you're asking the question to is not here. However, members of parliament are allowed to ask questions to President via some of the ministers. But yes, that's all. That's the most pressure felt. The other pressure has been from the media constantly reporting it. Almost every day we've seen maybe one or more than two stories in our papers questioning what exactly happened, what our evidence currently shows, new developments. That's the only sort of pressure that Gangop might have felt. But in terms of our political parties now, civil society, and just the members, the public members themselves, we have not seen any pressure or any accountability being required from their side towards Gangop's side.
We're going to have to leave it there. Shelleygan Peterse, thank you so much for your time this morning, Namibian journalist, just giving us the Namibian perspective in terms of exactly what has happened with what we have now come to term as Farmgate.